We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Okay, so we are going to talk about ghost towns for you today. And this episode is brought to you by one of our insiders. They requested we talk about ghost towns. And
which insider was that? You remember?
I can see their faces.
Foster's?
Yes.
Okay, that's who I thought.
Yes. And the thing about if you guys are listening and if there's something that you just say to yourself, I really wish they would talk about this, let us know. Just shoot us an email and we'll put it down. There's no real rhyme nor reason to our topics. We try to, spread it out so we don't talk about people every time or places every time. But we can throw something in that you want to hear. Otherwise, you get to hear what I want you to hear.
Well, and even on the topic of ghost towns, you can take that in several different directions, but we'll kind of start off and see where it goes, I suppose. So
we're not going to talk in depth about any particular ghost town because that can be a whole episode in and of itself. So we're just going to kind of talk about, we will touch on a couple, but we're just going to kind of talk about them in general. And I'll just say, Fosters, I am fascinated by ghost towns as well. I love ruins. I love old abandoned things. And this is just the quintessential ruins, old abandoned things, because that's pretty much what a ghost town is an abandoned town. Yeah,
living out west, I think we are pretty lucky to be surrounded by a lot of ghost towns.
Well, and even just driving around, you drive because Utah's pretty big. It's like the 10th biggest state in the nation, I think. And, it's 3 hours to drive to Moab. It's 4 hours to drive here. And there's just little abandoned buildings and places everywhere. So for me, I've just grown up with it.
And Utah has a real history of mining. There's a lot of mining that goes on in the state. And there were a lot of very successful mines that worked for a few years. And people would come in and it was amazing. It's like Mercer, it kicked up and it got up to around, I think it was, 15,000 people.
Oh, and it was then, like 25,000.
25,000?
Yeah,
and then it dries up and goes away because the ore dries up. And that's the case with a lot of it. And we'll talk about some of those different mining camps and towns that were ghost towns and, had some significant populations and significant buildings. And now, some of them there aren't any buildings left. Some of them the buildings have been abandoned. There aren't any things there. But it's amazing. But we do in Utah have a lot of those. And then there's a lot throughout the West in Colorado and California, Nevada. Again, because of the mining, that a real thriving community started and got going. And then the reason that the communities there petered out, that the ore dried up, things weren't available anymore, and everybody just packs up and goes somewhere else.
Right.
So I looked up on the Oracle of Knowledge of Wikipedia, and, just to kind of get a start. And what is a ghost town? So a ghost town obviously is a deserted city or an abandoned city. They usually contain some substantial visible remaining buildings and or infrastructure like roads, maybe some power lines if it's because there are some newer ones. But it's not just a totally abandoned city. It could be a standing city that just has such large areas of abandonment. For example, they named Detroit
as a ghost town.
As a ghost town, and because there's so many areas that are just completely abandoned to the point that they describe some of the areas as, and I wrote it down, I can't find it, as almost looking wilderness-like in Detroit, which used to be the fourth largest city in the United States back in the 1940s at the height of the
auto
industry. But you go there now and there's several places. And I personally was in downtown LA, and this would have been in the late 1990s, but just driving down a block or two, almost every building was abandoned, in this one little area. And I remember thinking, this is LA for heaven's sakes, and there's, a whole block or two of abandoned buildings.
Is that Skid Row?
I don't know. I just remember thinking, their big library was there, and the hotel was there that we were staying in, but then just a whole couple blocks of nothing.
Interesting.
So a lot of times, the causes for these are economic fails. The economy just tanks, and that's going to be, like the mining. The mine dries out, or natural or human disasters.
Like a nuclear
like Chernobyl
meltdown.
Yeah, that
Would
usually
you call
doesn't do good.
Chernobyl a ghost town? Yes, you would.
And a disaster.
Government actions. Sorry for the pause. I was trying to read my own handwriting. I usually type it and print it off, but I did it by hand today. Uncontrolled lawlessness, war, pollution.
Doc, you're aware of some places with pollution and ghost towns.
Yeah, well, I know places that aren't ghost towns with lots of pollution, too. I don't know if people know this, but I lived in the Ural Mountains and in western Siberia, and there are a couple of cities there that are still populated but are disaster sites. The one that was closest to me was called Karabakh, and it's a dying town. There's not a lot of people there, but they do copper smelting, and the amount of pollution there is just insane.
So they really don't follow the EPA guidelines?
No. In fact, you can see, like, the rivers just run red with byproducts from copper smelting. It's pretty nasty. There's this big giant mountain of slag right in the middle of the town. Mercury levels in the soil are 20 times higher than allowed by Russian law, which is a lot more lax than U.S. law. And so it's a dying town. People are getting, leukemia and all sorts of different types of cancers. And, over time, unless they do something about it, I don't know how sustainable it is there. And then there was also a place in an area called Muslimanov was the city that was closest to it, is the Mayak power facility. And the surrounding area has pretty much been abandoned because there's a lake there that has about 10 times more radiation than Chernobyl when it exploded. And that's at baseline. So about a 30-minute walk on the shoreline can give you a lethal dose of radiation.
Oh, yeah, we won't be vacationing there anytime soon.
Not a place to hang out.
So towns and cities around there are kind of abandoned?
Yeah, well, for years and years and years, they were dumping nuclear waste into this lake, and it was running downstream, and all the villagers were drinking it and had no clue what was going on. And the Soviets didn't want to disclose to people what was going on, so they just kept it secret for decades. And finally things are starting to come out because of all of the different illnesses and whatnot that's now, being seen there.
Yes. Well, looking around online, and you can probably find different things depending on the site, but there were several sites that said Pripyat, Ukraine, was the most famous. And I don't know if it was because of the size. It said it was home to 50,000 people who were evacuated in 1986 because of Chernobyl.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So
yeah, that one, the Soviet Union wasn't able to hide that because there were, big giant cloud of detectable radiation sweeping over Europe. There wasn't any way that they could keep that a secret.
Well, that was amazing. Was it the Norwegians?
Yeah, I believe so.
That called them up, and they were able to track it so well. They
was
called
this you guys?
the Soviets, and they said, we think you've got, and I don't know the exact terms, but we think that there's problems with your reactor number 12. Everything okay over there?
Right. We pinpointed it to this. Where I was at is deeper in the Ural Mountains, further from Europe, and they were able to keep a lot of that stuff concealed. And so they did end up relocating the population after a while, but they never really disclosed why they were doing it.
And now you're moving.
And doctors were not allowed to put cancer as a diagnosis on anybody who fell ill or died.
Interesting.
There was an interesting, was it a Netflix show that we watched a year ago or so?
I like it, the documentary
Chernobyl.
called Chernobyl.
Yeah. That was really a very, very interesting documentary. And I hear it's quite accurate. There's, of course, some Hollywood brought into it, but a lot of the things were quite accurate and very interesting on, the investigations that went on to try to figure out what was going on. And like you said, the Norwegians and the different people that were able to identify down to which reactor was having the problem,
right,
because they could read the characteristics of the radioactive isotopes.
Right. Well, obviously pollution being a cause of ghost towns is fairly recent, because back in the day. I don't think people really took pollution into consideration as to whether or not a place was suitable to live and work.
Right. Looking up, most of them are, old Western mining towns.
Right.
Yeah, and they didn't have the ecological issues around them, and for most of them, the mines petered out before, the toxicity got to that point. And I'm sure that was very toxic because they weren't taking care of things
Right.
the way they needed to. But a lot of times, maybe it was a blessing that the mines didn't stay open as long because they weren't doing the things from an environmental standpoint, and so maybe the people weren't getting as sick because they weren't as exposed as long.
But we've talked about, and we're going to come back to the ones in the West because, I don't know.
Because we're in the West.
Because we're in the West. They're near and dear to me. But Doc mentioned, these ghost towns in Russia. And there are actually ghost towns on every continent, even Antarctica, which surprised me. And the one in Antarctica, it was built in 1906. It was like a Norwegian-Chilean whaling company. And they built this little town called Deception Island. And it was actually quite profitable clear up until the Depression. And it was abandoned in 1931. And then what was left of it in 1969 was actually partially destroyed by some volcanic activity in the area. So everywhere you go in the world, there is even if you go to Antarctica, there's still ghost towns.
Yeah, there was a really neat video I just watched about an island off the coast of Japan, and it's not a very big island, but it was a major coal mine for Japan. And Doc and I watched a little bit of that this afternoon, and it was just amazing on, it ran for, 30, 40 years, and the infrastructure was brought in, big apartment complexes and everything, and then it was like, nope, we're done, no more, and they've closed it down. It's now a UNESCO site. But it's very interesting to see what happens to an area when people aren't there to maintain it.
Right. And it doesn't take that long. I mean, in a couple of decades, you can see that there's just vegetation all over the place.
Well, and then the interesting thing is it said not only is it, a completely abandoned town, but it can even, like we were talking about Detroit, I failed to mention cities like Deadwood and Tombstone are also considered ghost towns just because their population is so
Much smaller than it was at its height.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Because I was like, Deadwood?
Right.
I was just there. Like last year, it seemed like a very thriving little town, but I wasn't there in the height of the mining in the 18 whatevers.
Right. But their economy is so much more dependent on tourism now than the original purpose of the town, right?
Go in January. I'll bet it's a ghost town.
Probably.
There is a ski resort over there, sir. I'll have you know.
Okay.
Well, when we were there, it was in the height of the Sturgis
Bike rally?
and so there were tons of people there.
It didn't feel ghostly.
No, but it was awesome. It was so much fun. So before we dive into some of these more westerny ones, the question that I'm sure is on everybody's mind, you're waiting with bated breath, are they legal to explore? And the answer is yes, you can explore them, but at least in the U.S., the federal law says that you can look, you can take pictures, but you will be fined or imprisoned if you dig holes, even small ones, or remove anything from them because they're considered archaeological sites. And there are several that are on the National Historic Registers. So no metal detecting if you go to these places. You can cruise around and explore all you want, but do not take anything home with you. You get in trouble.
So when I was...
And don't vandalize either because you're just a jerk.
Right. Well, a couple of things with that. One, I seen where people were taking stuff from places and returning it because they were getting haunted. Excuse me, or getting bad luck. But I was watching some guy on YouTube who bought a ghost town, Cerro Gordo, and he is living up there and he is restoring it, and I think he's turning it into like bed and breakfast, and it was kind of fun watching his channel. It's called Ghost Town Living, and what he's doing with this ghost town is pretty awesome.
I have a whole list of ghost towns that are for sale. We will get to that. You know what I want for my birthday now?
A ghost town.
Ghost town. I love it.
We just got chickens.
And now you're getting a ghost town
Well,
and a pony.
I kind of commandeered Burker just a little bit, so maybe that's my ghost town. Rogue, you were talking about the curse. So the most famous and this surprised me, the most famous ghost town in the United States, which I thought would be something like Tombstone or something,
Yeah.
is actually Bodie, California. I'm like, it can't be the most famous. I've never heard of it. If I've never heard of it, it's not famous. But apparently other people have. So, but there's a thing called the Curse of Bodie. And the Curse of Bodie just is if you steal stuff from it, you're cursed until you take it back.
Don't take stuff from ghost towns.
Yeah.
And Bodie's at like 8,000 feet, so you have to hike up into it.
Yeah, it's not
So
something you're just going to run across.
Yeah, it's
And
not
isn't it
easy
like a
accessible.
California state park now? And I think there's
I don't know.
I think it's a
I think you're right.
protected by California state
Yeah.
law.
Yeah. It's also, so Bodie was on the list. It's also the oldest ghost town. Texas has the most. Texas has 511. But Bodie is the most famous in the U.S. and the oldest in the U.S. It was founded in 1876 by some miners. They mined gold and silver there. And about at the height of Bodie's prosperous times, they said they had about 24 people a day, miners, just flocking there to mine the gold. And it got to, in the 1870s, about 10,000 people.
Well, didn't they say that the ore was like 99.5% pure? That's why everybody was going crazy for that one little vein that was up there that they were all going after. And then after it was
petered
gone,
out.
it was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it kind of survived for a long time because of the railway that went through there. And in 1917, they closed the railway and actually scavenged the rails for the war effort. And then in 1942, because of the war, it closed and it just never reopened.
Yeah, and I do have a note here that it says that in 1962, California made it a state park.
Awesome.
That's good.
Bodie Ghost Town State Park. No, I'm
When
just kidding.
I-
I don't know what it's called.
When I seen pictures of it, there's quite a few of the buildings still standing.
Yeah, and in really good shape, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of neat when they're the ghost towns and the buildings are still viable.
Right. It sounds like Bodie doesn't seem as touristy to me as like a Deadwood or a Tombstone
Or Calico.
or Calico. You know, just kind of rebuilt and on the way to Disneyland. I don't know. But you know, that's
Have you done Calico?
I don't think so.
Calico Ghost Town. I remember doing that when I was like 12. So that was a long time ago.
I don't even know where it is.
It's on I-15. I rode off I-15 down by Yermo, California.
good old Yermo.
It's very cool. It's a very cool little ghost town, but it's very commercialized. It's more of a commercialized ghost town than you go and explore ghost town.
If I remember correctly, it's owned by like the people who own like the Guinness World Records or Ripley's Believe It or Not or something.
Oh,
I think
okay.
they put some money into Calico.
So ghost towns are going to be in 3 categories. They're either going to be a tourist attraction, which sounds like Calico is. They're just going to be forgotten somewhere, abandoned, or someone has purchased them. So, again, my birthday's coming up. Here's a list. Ready? Spring Canyon, Utah, 100 acres, near Helper, has it's a mining town. It was gutted by fire, and it is there. Oh, tons of ghost sightings there. A lot of ghost sightings. So
Helper seems like a pretty paranormal area anyway from our experience.
You drive through Helper and you can just there's lots of ghosts there.
You got
can
the feels?
You can feel them, but it's only 199,000.
Wow.
For 10 acres?
100 acres.
100 acres?
Is
100
there
acres.
any?
It's a steal.
Water and stuff?
Is there buildings? Utilities?
Just crispy ones from the fire.
My favorite.
No, this I'm sure if we looked at it more, we could find a little bit more about it. But
Google Earth. We're going to be on Google Earth.
But yeah, so Spring Canyon, Utah, and Helper's not that far.
No, Helper is not that far.
It's pretty close. So Woodside, Utah is another one. Now this one boggles me because Woodside, we drive past this a lot on the way to Moab. And all that I know of that's there is this gas station that looks like it was built in the 1960s.
Maybe even 50s.
And there's someone there in an RV that sells honey and
Buffalo jerky.
and it's still got the gas prices from like 1970.
74.
Yeah.
It's like 35 cents a
It
gallon or something.
is.
I guess in the 70s it might
It
have
was a little
got
higher,
up
got
to
to $1 a
It got
gallon.
up to $1, yeah.
So it peaked in 1910. It had a population of 328. It stayed open because of the railroad. And then 10 years later, it went down to 30 people. I think the only people that live there now are the people that sell the jerky. But if you want to buy Woodside, it's $3.9 million.
What?
Whoa.
Let's go buy the other one first.
Well, it does have. It's right next to. I think it's the Price River, but there's a little river that goes by it as you cross, and it's right there by the gas station and the jerky and all of that. So I don't know if you'd get water rights with that, but for 3-point-something million, I would hope you get water rights.
You better get a bag of jerky, too. That better come included.
Some
Monthly
money.
subscription.
Yeah, so Spring Canyon is closer and it's a lot more affordable. So we'll write that down for my list. Cerro Gordo, California. It's
Hey.
actually sold.
Oh, yeah, that was the one we were
That's
just
the one I
talking
just said,
about.
yeah.
Yeah, it's sold
To a New Yorker.
in 2018, and it sold for 1.4 million.
Is that what he paid for that?
1.4.
There are
Yeah.
quite a lot of
Him and his
buildings of that, isn't there?
investors.
Now, this
yeah, there's
one,
quite a few. Not a handful. I mean,
Yeah.
if we can get there, or if Mr. $1.4 million man will let you on the property.
I believe he would.
For a price, I'm sure you can get on.
I don't even think for a price. I think he lets people come up there. He wants to share it.
Because they said it was a very raucous city in the 1860s. Had 5,000 people live there, and they said at one point, at its peak, there was one murder a week there. So there's probably lots of
Yeah.
restless
Oh, yeah.
spirits wandering around.
Yeah. Let's go.
So Cerro Gordo.
Make it a field trip.
We're going to stay in California, and we're going to go to Swansea. This one sold in 2013 for $70,000, so much better than Spring City price-wise, but it sold. It was known for silver smelting. It has 33 acres. There's shacks on a dry lake bed, which when LA started getting bigger, they drained the water from the lake for the big city.
And that's why it turned into a ghost town? Or
Yep.
was it that the mine dried up?
It didn't really say.
They just
Something
said,
dried up.
we're taking this water. We're done.
Yeah. So I think between the mine probably drying up and the water drying up, they're like, okay, we're out.
Can't survive.
Seneca, California, sold in 2014 for $240,000. It was a gold mining town, had 12 acres. If that one comes back up on the market for any particular reason, you will literally get a gold mine because there's a gold mine on the property. It has a bar and it comes with a liquor license,
All right.
so you can just get that party started.
Perfect. And minerals are always worth money, regardless to how much our money is worth.
Okay, so we're gonna head north. We're gonna go to Milliken, Oregon, and I actually have a friend whose last name is Milliken. I asked if he was related. He didn't think he was. This one is currently for sale, $1.5 million. You get a cattle ranch, a mine, 74 acres, a post office, gas station, old store. Had 60 residents at its peak.
And now it has
An old store.
one person. That's a lot of work for one person to run around and be the mayor and the postman and the gas clerk.
Yeah, I figure 60 residents, and World War I started, and everyone just said we're out. I don't know why. I mean,
If you buy a ghost town, are you automatically the mayor? What is
I'm gonna.
I think you could vote yourself in.
it? Let's say you're having an election with one vote. All
That's
right.
right.
If I buy a ghost town,
I love it.
I'm going to be the Supreme Emperor,
Oh, there you go.
Of course you are.
the Supreme Empress of my
Supreme
ghost town,
Emperor.
Spring Empress of Spring City.
Great. I
Oh,
love that.
I like the ring of that. That sounds nice.
That's great.
Sound good?
Better
I'm doing.
make that happen.
That's what I'm doing. Okay, so Colorado. When people say ghost towns, I think Utah because I live here. I also think Colorado. I would probably think Texas if I
Oh,
thought
I'm
about
totally
it. hard enough.
down with Nevada.
Nevada, yes, Nevada's on the list. But we're going to go to Colorado. Cabin Creek, this one sold in 2017 for an unknown amount. But at one point, it was on Craigslist for $350,000.
On Craigslist.
On Craigslist.
It sounds legit. Yeah.
Right.
Craigslist.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering, is that title clear?
By the bridge.
Is that a clear title?
Did you meet in some random parking lot to like sell the deed, pull it out of the trunk, and be like, "This is yours, man"?
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
kind of like buying stars in the sky and stuff. I don't know. That one seemed a little sketchy to me. So if you own Cabin Creek, let us know how that's going. Legend, Cabin Creek has a legend. Legend has it that in the 1970s, people fled to an unsolved murder. And if you go there, is a gas station, restaurant, a shooting range, 2 homes, and an 8-room motel.
Oh.
There's a motel even.
There's a
Wow.
motel. So, but unknown murder, so that could be crazy haunted. Okay, so there's also.
Can you say psycho?
I know, right?
It's the Bates Motel.
What made you think? Like, exactly.
It was formerly owned by Norman Bates and Company. Yeah. Eek.
Okay, we're going to stay in Colorado. There's a ghost town there called St. Elmo, and they're not selling St. Elmo. They're selling Forest Service Road number something or other. And this one was cute. This was like this cute little. It looks like a little Western movie set or something. And so this one, we can put this on my birthday list because it's cute, and it's $84,900. So much
and
less.
it's affordable.
Much
It's
less than
cute
Spring City.
and affordable.
I think we're going to
Chad.
need a few more patrons.
Sign up
Please-
for Patreon.
please subscribe.
Well, I can't say that I haven't seen that happen on YouTube.
Raven needs a ghost town. Come on, pony up, people.
And Rogue needs to explore an abandoned mansion. So let's
This is
get
kind of
one in
like
your
a
ghost town.
twofer.
Exactly.
We'll have to go to Connecticut for that. We'll get there. Okay.
All right.
So Forest Service Road. We're gonna
From
have
what
to
I
rename
understand
that,
with
though.
St. Elmo in Colorado, it went from about 1880 to 1952. And it's at 9,961 feet elevation.
Ooh.
So it's way up there.
Yeah. And Forest Service Road. And again, this listing is not for St. Elmo itself. This is like a little
For the road
side
coming in?
service road. Fire destroyed the business section. It had about 2,000 people at the end of the 19th century. There's a fellow by the name of Anton Stark, which kind of gives me some
Tony
Game
Stark?
of Thrones.
No, I was thinking Marvel.
No, Game
Iron
of
Man.
Thrones.
Antone Stark.
Tony
Finally,
Anton
one
Tony.
I know. I know.
Are you sure this wasn't owned by Iron Man?
Either way, it was cool. So it's either owned by the Starks from Game of Thrones or Iron Man. But he moved to town in 1890. Fire destroyed it. Everyone's sad. 40 years later, the only people that still live there are descendants of the Stark family. And they believe that the daughter of Anton, who's the original founder, her name's Annabelle, they think that she haunts the town. So see, it's haunted. It's affordable.
And we're going to avoid
It's
the name
cute.
Annabelle.
And
That's what it said online.
I know, but I'm just
winter
saying,
is coming.
Exactly.
at
Winter
9,900
is
feet, it comes hard.
You bet your ass winter is coming.
It comes early. It stays a long time. We'll have to invest in the fireplace. Okay, South Dakota. I would probably also think of ghost towns in South Dakota.
Oh,
That
yeah.
seems ghost towny.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like Deadwood?
Yes.
Deadwood being the notorious one, right?
Right. So this one's called Sweat. Swett. Sweat.
Sweat.
Looks like sweat to me. It's 250,000. It has 6 acres. It has a home, a tavern. In 2015, it was actually listed at 400,000, but because of the paranormal activity, they had to cut the price.
Oh,
Scoop
you think
in.
that
So
would add value.
I'm
Swoop
thinking,
on down and steal that ghost town.
I'm thinking as a ghost hunter, you're like cheaper and haunted. Thank you. Yes, I'll take it.
Let's call him.
I don't know. Forest Service Road was cute, and it's the cheapest. Okay,
And it's 9,900
Yeah.
feet.
Winter is coming, guys.
that's okay.
It can be a summer retreat
We'll just
for a
go
month
there.
out
Let's
of the
go there in
year.
summer.
In,
Okay.
in terms of ghost towns, I mean, do you think that they're haunted? What gives them that vibe? Is it just the fact that there was a whole lot of energy there at some point in time that has since been removed? Is it because of the events that took place? What is it that makes people go, ooh, a ghost town? I want to
Yes,
go check this
all of
out.
that. I think, first of all, for me, anyway, I don't want to talk for everybody, but for me, it's called a ghost town.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're little, that's a ghost town. The first thing that would come to my mind is, oh, there's ghosts that live there.
Right.
But I do think, a lot of these were the old mining towns. The old mining towns, they would bring in women for prostitutes because, the men had needs and they're mostly miners. There was a lot of killings. I think just a lot of reasons to have some negative energy and just tense energy. People were just trying to eke out a living. And, murders and...
Really emotionally charged
Yes.
things happening all the time.
Public hangings. I came across a lot of public hangings in the different towns that are now ghost towns.
Oh, yeah. And just, lawlessness because these cities are just popping up.
Exactly.
Boom. And you get some, a reckless named himself lawman. And I'm sure there were some that were actual processes. But just that whole Wild West.
Kind of the happenings of the town is what kind of gives it the energy. I was just kind of thinking, you were talking about creepy dolls, and I thought one of the things that's weird about dolls is the fact that they look lifelike, but they're not living. And I didn't know if that same rationale could be applied to a ghost town where there was life there, but there's not life there now, if that just adds to the energy or the spookiness.
Well, see, that's one thing that, for me, fascinates me about ghost towns because you go to, for example, Merker Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
You go there now, and there's just this little dilapidated, sad little cemetery. With some picket fences around them, and
But
some
it's
just
been
have
spruced
rocks.
up and had some paint at it.
Yes, it was
Somebody
not
did
very
that.
nice. But at one time, it was a thriving city with 25,000 people.
And where was the city? So
I think up the canyon further where you can't get to now.
Yeah,
Oh,
you actually
okay.
are blocked off from that. You can go out and look at it at Google Earth, and there really is no remnants of the buildings. But
Yeah.
there were thousands of buildings and 25,000 people. It was one of the largest cities in the state. I think
Yeah.
they said it was, after Salt Lake and Provo, it was the third largest city in the state.
And
So-
it burned down twice.
okay, so the buildings burnt down. They didn't all just go dilapidated and back to earth.
So it
kind of
burnt
things.
down once, they rebuilt it, and it burned down again, and I don't think they rebuilt it after that.
Yeah, and I think the construction or the gold company may have actually gone in and cleaned up the debris because they
I
still
see.
have operations, and they had operations going there for a time, and they still have the claim on the property.
Yeah, it's still a
and
working mine.
you can't get up there. There's a road that has a gate that goes across it, so you can't get up to where the actual town site was. You can get to the cemetery, but you got to go up further to get to the town site, and
Yeah.
it's blocked off.
And the mining company owns the property that the cemetery is on, and they said, we don't care about the cemetery. As long as, people can come and go to the cemetery, just do not go on mining property. Because if you do, they'll call the police on you. Or they might just shoot you. I don't know.
Because they own the land. Yeah.
Because they don't want
And
you.
there's gold.
They don't want you.
And they're finding, yeah, exactly. They're still mining there.
They don't want you claim jumping.
And Merker's really interesting because, as you said, it kind of died once as a ghost town and then came back to life and did that. And they had, it was the first place they did a certain mining thing to extract gold from the ore. And it was the process that was done, and it was actually that process that made it possible for the reemergence of it because the ore wasn't as high in the concentration, and this was the first place that process is used, and now it's used all over the world. But Merker was actually the first place that used that process to extract the gold from the mine, and it's used cyanide and some other things. And the other thing that I learned is they also mine cinnabar up there, and cinnabar is the mineral from which mercury is extracted, and therefore the name Merker.
There you go.
The town name is
From Mercury.
that's where they got it, was from Mercury, as Merker.
So there's no buildings in Merker, but you do go to these ghost towns where there's nothing there, a few old buildings. And this is what I love about ghost towns and ruins, just in general, is you look at these ruins, you look at this dilapidated, falling down building with holes in the roof and the doors missing, and you're standing there and you're thinking at one point that was a brand new building and someone was very proud of that, and they were moving in, and mom was looking out the window while she was stirring up the batter for dinner, and kids were playing, and dad went off to the mine, and there was energy there, and there was a town, and there was a life. And now there's me and some crickets and a tumbleweed blowing through,
Right.
Right.
and to me it's just fascinating just to stand there and try to imagine what it was like when it was thriving and booming. And
Right. I agree.
Kind of like Mercer. There is a little town called Ward. Well, I don't even know if it's a town anymore. It's in Nevada. It's outside of Ely. You can look up Ward charcoal ovens. They have these big kind of beehive-shaped domes where they used to basically, help
I've been
extract silver, I think is what they used to mine there. And the story that's pretty interesting. They have a small cemetery. It's probably similar to Mercer, would be my guess. There's some iron, fencing around some things and whatnot, but there's also a lot of wood. But the story behind Ward was that they built these charcoal ovens so they could, heat up this ore and extract silver. And the area is dry enough that they had to keep going further and further out to get wood to heat the charcoal ovens to extract the ore, that eventually they cleared so much wood that it was, it was like a 20-mile trip or more to try to go get more wood to support the ovens to extract the ore, and they could no longer do it, so they abandoned the whole site. And, you can tell they cleared some trees out. This was back, I think it was in the later 1800s as well. But the ovens are still in very good condition. They're big. You can walk into them. The acoustics are pretty impressive because of the dome shape. And there's 5 or 6 of them. We ended up taking a trip out there and found it very fascinating. It's just a little spot off the side of the road over by Ely, Nevada. So something to check out.
On the loneliest highway in America?
Yeah.
It was pretty dang lonely when we went out there.
I have some pictures. If you remind me, I will go on my cloud. I've got pictures of that.
That would be
upload.
cool.
The night sky viewing is incredible out there because there's no big towns really for miles and miles. And so if you're looking for a chance to go view the Milky Way, it's amazing.
So I've never been there, but I've been to Ely. And Ely, if you're unaware of Ely, is, because I do know we've got several foreign listeners, thank you. But Ely is about midpoint. It's about the same distance to get to Salt Lake as it is to get to Las Vegas. And there's Ely, and then there's Salt Lake, and there's Las Vegas, and there's
nothing else. I mean, there's a couple little tiny towns.
Little tiny towns, but yeah,
and Ely is a tiny town in itself.
It's got working brothels.
It does have working brothels. You've got the Caterpillar dealership on one side and the cat house on the other side.
And if you take they've got this fun little train ride that will take you out to
it's an old steam locomotive.
Mm-hmm. And I think that weren't there some, like a little partial ghost town out there?
Yep.
On the train ride?
And then they take you up to the mine. There's a copper mine, and that's what the town was based around, again, is copper mining.
And when you're on this train, at one point you're looking down into like the yard of the brothel, and if the ladies are in there, they wave at you.
That brothel is now closed. I hate that I can tell you that.
That happened? That's got to be recent.
It happened. It flooded, and they didn't want to fix it. That particular one. So there's only one left.
The one that's right across the street?
Yes, the one that's right across the street.
The things you learn on this podcast.
I have pictures of that, too. If you remind me, we can upload. I have pictures of the inside of the brothel.
Send them, and I'll put them on the YouTube video feed.
Okay, I have to come back to our last for sale ghost town. This is the one that Roke's going to like. However, it's been sold. Sorry.
Way to dangle it.
Sorry. It was purchased by a Philippines-based church, and it's kind of their headquarters. But it sold in 2017 for $1.85 million. It's in Johnsonville, Connecticut.
Oh.
It has 62 acres. There were several homes, a post office, a store, and a beautiful, beautiful old Victorian church.
Oh.
Which is probably why they bought it.
Yeah.
But they had a mill, and it burned down in 1972 from lightning. And they believe it's haunted by the founder, whose name is Emery Johnson, hence Johnsonville. So there you go. So if that comes back up on the market.
All right. Maybe we could get some Patreons out there to help us with the deposit.
Old Victorian church, got it.
Huh? You never know until you ask.
Should we start talking ghost towns? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Should we talk about,
Let's talk about
what our favorite ghost towns are that we've been to or want to go to?
Yeah, I think you've got one that you told me about.
Yeah, the one that I haven't been to yet. I've been to Deadwood, I've been to Tombstone, and they're fairly touristy. But one of the places I want to go that I have not been yet is Pioche. Pioche, Nevada.
So you were telling me about that earlier today, and I told Chad, I said next time we have a free weekend, we're going to take a drive.
Yeah.
Because it's not that far. It's just like an hour east of Cedar City.
Oh.
Hour west of Cedar City.
Yeah, it's I think total maybe 4.5 hours to get out there. So Pioche is spelled Pioche. It's right by Cathedral Gorge State Park in Nevada. And at one point in time, it was a big silver mining town.
I lived in Cedar City for like
See,
4 freaking years. I don't know why I never
You
went
could
there.
have gone to Pioche. So Pioche kind of puts, from a reputation standpoint, people don't know much about it, but as far as the going downs at Pioche, it was pretty intense. The claim is that 75 people died in Pioche before the first person died of natural causes. So there were a lot of murders that happened in Pioche.
A lot of energy going on there.
Yeah, and a lot of that was because of claim disputes. People would stake a claim, and then everybody would, they'd go to court and bribe the judge, and the judge, whoever gave them the most money, would say, oh, this is your claim, kind of a thing. And so what they started doing was hiring basically gunmen to guard their claims at night, and when people tried to come up on their property, they'd shoot them.
Yeah, claim jumping in those mining towns, that was serious business. You do not claim jump.
There was a lot of disputes, and then of course, they've got their little main street that had all of their saloons and whatnot, where people were getting drunk and shooting guns, and all the brothels, and you name it. But I thought, geez, 75 people died there before the first person died of natural causes. That's pretty intense.
That's
and
crazy.
in fact, they said in Pioche, I think it got to maybe 10 or 15,000 people, but at one point in time, 60% of all homicides in the Nevada territory happened in Pioche.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to go
Those
check out
are
Pioche.
very nice people. And I was just looking, as of 2019, there's still 1,354
There you
people
go.
living there.
So they're down from 10 or 15,000. I can't remember the number, but there's still people there. There's a hotel there. And they do have some restaurants and stuff. So I thought,
Go stay the night.
let's go check it out. It would be
Sounds
awesome.
like fun.
Well, and last, get your Supernatural Hour swag at advancedparanormal.com. We have all sorts of items there. Shirts and mugs and
Tapestries.
and
He was
bumper
waiting
stickers.
for me to say
and-
that.
Of course.
He was giving me the eye.
And don't forget our house-made items, our sage spray. We now have our lip balms and our sage rollers available. Also, you can find us on TikTok, and we love and appreciate our Patreons, and we're always looking for more. Thank you.
And we're on Instagram, too.
And we can't get those haunted ghost towns without more Patreon supporters.
I know, come on.
Rogue and Raven need new birthday presents.
It's coming up.
All right, we would like to thank Utah Freeze Dried for Pets, also Rescue Pets Bathhouse.
And we want to give a shout out to Barbary Coast Saloon. We're going to be going there for our witching hour. If you want a great little steak, go on Thursday nights. It's amazing. And if you want a delicious, absolutely phenomenal cream cheese stuffed pretzel drizzled with caramel and chocolate, that's the place to go because it is amazing and low calorie.
Sounds decadent.
Very low calorie. Also, Dalton's and Oteo's restaurants are fabulous if you're looking for some good food. We also want to give a shout out to Boar Off-Road Backcountry Adventure Rally. They are just a great group of people. I've actually started following them on Facebook when we paired up with them to do Merker Cemetery. And they go out, they do so many service projects. I'm like, do you guys even have time to Jeep? Apparently they do, but they do so many service projects. And so if you're looking for a service project to do, I would give them a shout out because they will, I mean, they partnered with us, for heaven's sake, so they'll partner with anybody.
Their standards are very low.
But if you're looking for a service project to do or looking for a fun group of people, if you're into Jeeping, the great group. Also, Castle. You'll remember Castle. He has started doing some photography, and it was called Castle's Nature Studio. He has since changed the name. He's starting to do some portraits, and he does a really good job. And if you have listened to the show at all, you know he's my little brother. And so I can tell you from experience, lifelong knowing this boy, is I'm the big sister, so I can call him the boy. When he does something 110%. If he takes your photos, you're going to get a good photo. He has the right equipment, the right lighting, and you're going to get a good product. So I think we're good for today.
Perfect. That wraps it up.
Stay haunty, my spooky friends.
I love you, Nicholas.
Have a good one.
Hey, good night.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright 2021 by Advanced Paranormal Services.